A dad noticed his toddler acting unusual, so he took one sip of her apple juice and immediately called 911. On a Sunday after they were finished with church, this family decided to go eat lunch at a restaurant. The parents chose an apple juice for their daughter Aaliyah to drink. Everything was going normal so far, then they paid their bill and got up to leave the restaurant. But as they were heading to the exit, Aaliyah's father noticed something odd. She was a little off balance, so he grabbed his daughter's juice that she was still drinking and took a sip. And he felt a slight burning sensation through his chest. His wife was interested, so she decided to take a sip as well and got the same feeling. They came to the conclusion that it tasted like alcohol, which isn't good for a toddler to be drinking. They were furious, so they got the manager, and it was confirmed by the waitress that the toddler was given an alcoholic beverage by accident. The manager spoke with the bartender and he said that the container of alcohol was mislabeled as apple juice. The manager decided to refund them for the bill. They then took their daughter to the hospital, and after 2.5 hours they luckily didn't find anything wrong with her. This mother didn't understand why her son's grave was green, but when she found out why, she cried. The United States Air Force Staff Sergeant Joseph Villasino was killed in a car crash. His parents Raymond and Rachel would visit his grave very often. When the weather started to get cold, they didn't go as often. As soon as it warmed up again, they went back and were shocked to see the grass around his grave green when it was brown everywhere else. At first they thought it was a miracle, but then a man came up to them and told them he was taking care of it. His name was Jake Rysick. In 2014, he lost his wife of 65 years and had never quite recovered from her unexpected passing. In 2015, there was barely any rainfall, so it caused the grass at the cemetery to die. He decided to start watering the grass around his wife's grave to make it green again. While he was doing this, he seen a girl crying in a nearby grave, so he went to talk to her. It turned out to be Joseph's wife, who had been passed away for 5 years now. They talked and were able to provide some comfort for each other. When she left, he decided he wanted to do something nice for her. So each day when he watered his wife's grave, he watered Joseph's as well. So when he walked up to Joseph's parents, he said it was the least he could do for someone who served his country. This baby kept disappearing from her crib at night, and you won't believe why. 15-month-old baby named Chloe had a bed with safety guards. Every night her parents put her to bed and closed the door to the room. But early one morning, the mom went to the kitchen to make coffee and breakfast. She was shocked to see her daughter wandering around and playing with toys. They thought that they maybe forgot to close the door and that it was a one-time thing, so they let it go. They decided to turn up the baby monitor even louder so it would wake them up if there was any movement. At around midnight, they were woken up by the alarm and went to the living room to see Chloe wandering around again. They tried to ask her how she got there, but she just giggled. This happened multiple nights in a row, and they lost sleep because of it because they didn't want her to get hurt. So they decided to buy a camera to place in Chloe's room. The next morning, when they found her in the living room, they decided to check the camera, and you won't believe how she got out. But before I show you, I found this app that pays you to do something that you already do every day. All you have to do is download it by pressing the link in the comments, then it will start tracking how many steps you take and pay you for it. Now, on the baby camera footage, they saw their 2 dogs opening the door to greet their best friend Chloe. 3 Home Alone traps that would kill you. In Home Alone 2, Kevin makes a swinging pipe at the top of the staircase, then throws it at them directly in the face before cutting the rope and letting it fall on them. The first impact would probably be enough to kill them, because a heavy pipe like that would crush a human skull. But if that wasn't enough to kill them, then when Kevin cuts the rope and the pipe falls on them, that would do it. In the first movie, Kevin pours water on the stairs to make ice. Falling down stairs that are concrete can cause a lot of broken bones and even death. The men could have easily broken their necks if they landed the wrong way, and Harry was even close to it when he landed on his back. Finally, in Home Alone 3, Kevin set up a trap where it looks like he's trying to get up somewhere, but it was actually a prop that's attached to a lawnmower by a rope. So when he pulled on it, the lawnmower fell on him. We all know that this would have shredded him, but in the movie, all that happened is he got a nice little haircut. This girl found her face on a milk carton titled Missing Girl and realized her whole life is a lie. In the 1970s, non-custodial kidnappings were more common. This is where a parent who doesn't have the rights to their child's custody after a divorce takes them. In the 1980s, a campaign was started to return children to their rightful guardian. A lot of big companies were involved, but the most popular was Milk Carton Pictures. When 7-year-old Bonnie Loman was eating with her mother and stepfather, she seen her picture on a milk carton. But she didn't know what it meant, so she asked her stepfather if she could keep the picture of her. He agreed, but he told her to keep it a secret. One day when she was playing at her neighbor's house, she forgot her box of toys by the door, and inside was the picture of her. As soon as the neighbor saw the picture, she realized the girl was a victim and called the police. It turns out that Bonnie was kidnapped from her biological father by her mom and stepfather at the age of 3. But after the police got involved, she was reunited with her father. This boy spent 7 years in jail for a crime he didn't commit. In 2009, 26-year-old Kenzie Hauk was found dead in her house. She was also 8.5 months pregnant. The suspect was 11-year-old Jordan Brown, who was soon to be her stepson. Less than 24 hours later, the police arrested him, accusing of using his shotgun, which was a hunting gift from his dad, to shoot her before getting on the bus to go to school. His father began to fight to free him, driving 4 hours every single day to visit him at juvenile detention. But 3 years later, when he was 15 years old, he was found guilty of a double homicide. His lawyers decided to bring the case to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, and in 2018, the court said that there wasn't enough evidence that he committed the crime, so he was released at the age of 21. This man saved a stranger's pets and home from a house fire. He was out for a jog when he saw smoke coming out of a house, so he went and rang their doorbell. No one answered the door, but after a few seconds, he heard a voice talking through the Ring doorbell saying hi.
Hi.
Hello? There's smoke coming out of the top of your house.
He then told her that her house was on fire. Her 2 dogs, a rabbit and a cat, were all inside the house. So she decided to give the jogger her home security code so he could go inside the house and save them. He went in the house, and after a few minutes he came out with his arms full of pets, then went back in for more. In the end, all the pets were rescued and the house fire was put out. This lady used Gorilla Glue as hairspray, and you won't believe what her hair looks like now. 40-year-old Tessica ran out of hairspray, and for some reason she had Gorilla Glue on her counter, so she decided to spray it all over her hair. If you don't know what Gorilla Glue is, it's one of the strongest glues in the world. And a little while later, her hair was as stiff as a rock. She tried washing it out 15 times and even went to the emergency room, but nothing worked. But finally, a plastic surgeon named Michael Obango offered to help, and you won't believe what her hair looks like now. But before I show you, I found this app that lets you remove anything from your photos. Just press the link in the comments to get it. After 4 hours of using adhesive remover, aloe vera, olive oil, and acetone, this is what she looks like now, showing off her brand new hairstyle. 2 times good people got good karma. When Dominique Harrison Benson lost her bank card after a night out, she was panicking because she couldn't pay for a taxi and had no other way home. But when a homeless man named Robbie seen her stressed out, he went and offered her his last 3 British pounds for her to get a taxi home. It was the only money he had, but he was more concerned about her safety than anything. She was so thankful that when she got home, she created a GoFundMe page for the man, which quickly spread around social media. Her goal was to raise £30,000, but she beat that in no time, getting even more money to give to Robbie and the rest of the homeless people in her town. In 2011, Victor Geisbeck pulled over on the highway to help 2 girls change their flat tire because no one else would stop for them. Then he continued on his way without expecting anything in return. The 2 girls then saw his truck pulled over on the side of the road, so they stopped to check on him, and were shocked to find him in the middle of a heart attack. But luckily, one of the girls was a nurse and immediately began CPR, saving his life. The dumbest prison escape attempt. Andrew Wilson was doing time for burglary, theft, and possession of substances. He was just about to receive results from his parole hearing to see if he would be released from prison or not. Since he wasn't considered a high-risk inmate, he was given a little more freedom, which one day he took advantage of. He stole a truck from the work camp he was at, then drove to the next town. He then ditched the truck and ran off. But it wasn't long until he was caught with illegal substances again, and was brought back to the prison where he was faced with 2 new charges: possession and escape from custody, which resulted in extending his time in prison. But when he got back, he did receive some good news. The parole department approved his release only 24 hours after he escaped. I bet he wish he stayed now. 3 times the Avengers cast spoiled their movies. One day, Tom Holland, who plays Spider-Man, was on Instagram Live, and he decided to open a package he got from Marvel Studios. Inside the box was the poster for the new Avengers Infinity War movie. But when he takes out the paper, it says confidential, do not share, and his reaction is priceless.
No.
When Mark Ruffalo, who plays the Hulk, was being interviewed for Avengers Endgame, he accidentally spoiled the ending of the movie.
Wait till you see this next one. Everybody dies.
Dude.
Not everybody. No.
But Tom Holland is the worst at spoiling. Here's another video where he spoiled a scene.
There was a few things that I couldn't do. There was like some time where they dangled my poor stunt double under a helicopter and dunked him in a lake. Damn it.
And because of this, they decided to stop letting him read the script for the rest of the movie, so he has to wait to find out what happens when it's released.
If I'm honest with you, I actually know nothing about this movie. I'm not allowed to read the scripts because I'm so bad at keeping secrets.
This lady was being held hostage until she sent a secret message that saved her life. 25-year-old Cheryl Treadway had a fight with her boyfriend, who's also the father of their 3 children. He took away her phone, threatened her, and wouldn't let her leave the house. After a long fight, she managed to convince him that their kids were hungry, so he let her order pizza because she wasn't allowed to leave the house. On the app, she chose a small pepperoni pizza and wrote, "Please help, get 911 to me." She also left a comment saying 911 hostage help. The manager said that in her 28 years of working there, she's never seen anything like that before, but of course called the police. When the police got to the house, she was able to leave with one of the kids, but the other 2 stayed with the father. During the negotiations, the police managed to persuade the father into releasing the children and to surrender. He was then charged with kidnapping, armed assault, and obstruction of justice. Dumb criminals who uncovered their own crimes. In 2008, Anthony Garcia was arrested for driving with an expired license. Since he was apparently a member of the famous Rivera 13 gang, they took pictures of not only him but all of his tattoos. When one of the sergeants was looking closely at one of the photos, he seen a familiar story. Garcia's tattoo accurately showed a murder that happened on January 23rd, 2004. Everything from the sign on the building, the streetlights, to the trajectory of the bullets made his tattoo a confession to the crime. In the tattoo, the victim is being shot by a chopper, which is Garcia's nickname. Dopey Umar Mirza decided to rob the Paddy Power store after failing to get a job there. The thief was wearing a black ski mask and stole around $22,000 from the store. But the second he stepped outside the store, he took off the mask and the security cameras caught him. The owners of the store recognized him, and since he handed in all of his information to apply for the job, the cops easily found out where he lived and arrested him. The 3 biggest mistakes in movies that you missed. In the movie Jurassic Park, during a scene where a dinosaur enters the kitchen and the children hide from it, something very odd happens that I bet you missed. Someone decided to touch the dinosaur's butt. If you look closely, you could see a hand. Apparently Batman had a secret superpower that we didn't know about, because in the movie The Dark Knight Rises, during a fight, one of the opponents falls without Batman even touching him. Finally, in the movie Gladiator, the movie takes place around 2,000 years ago, but in one of the fights in the arena, if you look on the left you can see a big camera, but the thing is, they didn't even exist back then. And if you look in the stands, you can even see someone with a plastic water bottle, when again, they didn't exist that long ago. Everyone laughed at this guy's house until they seen what was inside. This guy served in the US military as a pilot for almost 30 years. When he retired in his 60s, he bought a small little house in San Francisco, California. But the problem was, almost everyone else in his neighborhood was super rich, and pretty much lived in mansions. Because of this, his neighbors refused to speak to him and laughed at him when they seen him. One day, when he was sitting on his front porch, a bunch of rich kids showed up at his house and started making fun of him. At first, he was upset, but then he decided to invite the kids inside. And little did they know, he was hiding the biggest secret in the entire neighborhood. But before I show you what's inside, I found this app that lets you prank your friends and family by dragging these stickers onto their text message to change it. Just press the link in the comments to get it. In his basement, there's a full-size flight simulator with millions of dollars. This man served the shortest sentence of all time. In the summer of 2019, Shane Jenkins said that he was gonna break a lady's window. That night, he went to her house and broke her window with a broom, but the lady was prepared and called the police. By the time the police got there, Shane had already ran away. A few hours later, he was eventually caught by the police. When he was caught, he made an apology letter to the police and the lady. It said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt anyone." The case then went to court and the judge sentenced him with 50 minutes in jail, not even an hour. Here are the darkest secrets about Willy Wonka. Pretty much everything you see in the chocolate garden is edible, but one of the things you couldn't eat was the river, which was made out of chocolate, water, and cream, because the cream ended up going bad a week in and it smelled terrible on set. The flour that Willy Wonka ate in the scene was actually made out of plastic. The directors forced him to eat it until the scene was all over. The girl who played Violet had to give up chewing gum after losing almost all of her teeth due to the cavities she got. The foam used in this scene was completely toxic. All the actors had allergic reactions to it and were in the hospital for days. Everyday items that prisons have banned, and why. Gum has been banned for a few reasons, but one of them is because it can be used to jam the cell door's lock. So when a guard tries to lock it, it won't and the prisoner can get out. A lot of prisoners spend time drawing or writing on paper, and although that's allowed, they can't have a notebook that has a spiral. You may think it's because it could be made into a weapon, which is true, but it could also be used to pick a lock. Finally, in lots of prisons, you're not allowed to have a hardback book, because they could be a good hiding place for a weapon, which has been done before. But another reason is because a big book like Harry Potter, for example, would hurt if someone was hit in the back of the head with it. 2 prison guards who were saved by inmates. In this footage from 2015, 17-year-old Jamal Lutridge is being processed at Fort Lauderdale Police Department. As the officer is booking the teenager for burglary, he gets a pain in his chest and collapses onto the floor. The boy looks around and realizes they're alone, so he starts yelling and kicking on the door to get some help, and ended up saving him from a potentially deadly heart attack. They even had a ceremony to honor him. Inmates from a jail in Georgia were at a cemetery watering the plants and cutting the grass. As the day went on, the guards started to hyperventilate due to the heat and collapsed, leaving the prisoners there without any guards. They could have easily ran away, but they didn't. 6 of the prisoners rushed immediately to help the guard. They took off his bulletproof vest so he could breathe better, and one of them grabbed his phone to call 911. And because they saved a life, all 6 of them got their sentences reduced by a quarter. Here's how a vending machine actually works. When you place a coin in the machine, light sensors determine the size and electromagnets detect the metal type to identify the coins, then sort them into columns. And if it's a fake, it goes into the reject chute. When it needs to give change, it releases 1 coin carefully at a time into the chute. When you press a key, a computer orders one of the 32 motors to turn the spiral 360 degrees. Then as the snack falls, it hits a line of 10 infrared beams. If nothing crosses the beams, then the computer orders the coils to turn another 360 degrees until something does. The place where murder is legal. The specific area is in Yellowstone National Park. Unlike any other district, the District of Wyoming includes land from other states. So if someone was caught for murder in that area, they would be brought to Cheyenne, which is the main court in Wyoming, because the crime technically happened in Wyoming. But in the United States Constitution, it says, the trial shall be held in the state where the crime was committed. So if they invoke their rights to having a trial in Idaho, it will force the court to bring them back there. But it also says that the jury who gives a verdict in a case based on the evidence has to be from the same state and district of where the crime was committed. But the thing is, no one lives there. The 5 worst advertising fails. Snow White is on this package for apples, but I don't know if I trust them because in the movie she got poisoned by one. On the box for Connect 4, it shows that it includes blue discs to block your opponent. And it shows the red player using one when they could have just won. On this ad for this massager, it shows that you could use it anywhere, including studying, in the office, at home, and I guess even while you're driving with your eyes closed. This store was having a sale on computers, but apparently these PCs won't last long. But what they were really trying to say is that they'll sell out fast. Now before I show you the worst one, I found this app that tells you your celebrity lookalike, and apparently I look like Robert Downey Jr. Just click the link in the comments to try it and let me know who you get. Finally, on this ad for unbreakable wine glasses, it shows a kid holding one. If you see a cookie under your doormat, call the police immediately. When a burglar finds a house to target, they start by watching the owner to find out information about their routine to figure out the best time to enter the house. One of the tactics they use to gather information is so simple you wouldn't think twice about it. But next time you hear a crunch under your shoe while entering your house, stop and check what it is, because if it's a cookie, you're in trouble. This is a tactic burglars use to see if you're gone on a trip or what time you come home every day. Since it's a cookie, people usually don't think too much about it and may even think it's a leaf or a bug. But if the burglar checks on the cookie and it hasn't been broken in a couple days, then they know you're gone on a trip and will break into your house. This story sounds fake, but it's 100% real. In 2013, Jim Stouffer's mother passed away from Alzheimer's at the age of 74. Doctors told Jim that the disease mutated in a way that they had never seen before, and asked if he was willing to donate her body for brain research. Jim decided to donate it to the Biological Resource Center in Phoenix, which removes body parts for scientific research, then cremates the rest and returns the ashes to the family members. Jim received his mother's ashes, but without specifying what was done to her body. A year later, the center was raided by the FBI after hearing accusations that they were selling the donated bodies for profit, and among them was Jim's mother, who was sold for $5,893. It turns out that the bodies were actually used for US military experiments, and according to investigations, Jim's mother's body was strapped to a chair that was then detonated by a bomb underneath it to understand the effects on a body when a vehicle is hit by an explosive device. Jim and others who were affected sued the center, and in 2019 they were awarded $58 million for the damage, with the center being no longer in operation. A musical instrument that could be played without touching it. The theremin was invented by accident in 1920 by the Russian musician and scientist Leon Theremin. He was creating a device that could measure the density of gases, but realized what he made produced sound that changed according to your hand position. The instrument consists of a box with two metal antennas on the sides and oscillators that control the frequency and amplitude of sound. The electrical signals produced by the instrument are then sent to a loudspeaker. The first antenna is on the right, which controls the pitch. The closer you place your hand, the sharper the sound is. The farther you move your hand away from the antenna, the louder it will be. The theremin has been used several times to create themes for television shows and was played in the 70s by Jimmy Page, who's the founder of the Led Zeppelin band. 4 places on the planet that science can't explain. Devil's Caldera waterfall is formed by 2 waterfalls. One falls into a cavity while the other one continues downstream normally. Scientists have tried to find out where the water that falls through the cavity goes, but so far they have no clue. Stonehenge is a rock formation built thousands of years ago, but how would they lift each rock if they weighed between 4 and 37 tons? Archaeologists have suggested that they use systems of sleds, wheels, and boats, but they still don't know for sure. Every night for the past 4 decades, bright lights of different colors and shapes appear in the sky over Hessdalen. Scientists think that they are formed from luminescent particles, resulting from the evaporation of water from a radioactive lake. The boiling river of Amazon has a temperature of around 91 degrees Celsius, but scientists have no clue why it reaches that temperature because there's no active volcanoes to heat the water nearby. Scary experiments that could have ended the world. In 1970, the Soviet Union began digging a hole in Russia to try and drill into the Earth's crust to see what was underneath. But according to scientists, drilling this deep would dislodge so much rock so quickly that it would trigger systemic forces like never seen before. But after digging for 12 kilometers, they gave up due to high temperatures. In 1989, a Soviet defector informed the British embassy that the Soviet Union was preparing biological weapons, using deadly pathogenic microorganisms. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the weapons were never used, and if they had been, you might not be watching this, because they would have wiped out most of the world's population. And finally, it was said that when the Soviets were creating biological weapons to harm humans, Americans wanted to use fungi to damage crops with the intention of removing the food supply of the entire country. The problem is, if they did so, the fungus would have spread to not only the country but to the entire world. Unsolved mysteries that have footage. On March 31st, 2006, medical student Brian Schaffer disappeared in the middle of the night when he was with his friends at a bar named Ugly Tuna. That was the last time he was ever seen, and the bar's surveillance camera served as evidence. It shows Brian talking outside the bar before going back inside, but he was never seen leaving. Detectives found no trace of Brian, nor did any other surveillance cameras around the site. Some people say the cameras weren't working or they were manipulated, but so far nobody knows anything. On March 18th, 2009, Claudia Lawrence had a phone call with her mother, and that was the last time they spoke. The next day, she didn't arrive at work and no one heard from her since. The police discovered that only her purse, phone, and chef's uniform were missing from her house, so they thought she went to work like usual. Surveillance camera footage from the street next to her house shows a suspicious man dressed in black walking around her house around 7:15 p.m. He then disappeared, then a minute later reappears with a bag, then stops walking when he notices someone, then continues walking after they leave. But no one knows if he had anything to do with her disappearance. Things you're doing wrong and didn't know. Deodorant should actually be applied at night and not in the morning. Since you produce less sweat at night, your armpits will be able to absorb more of the active ingredients, allowing it to work for approximately 24 hours. The correct way to peel a banana is to start from the bottom and not the top. Doing it this way, it's easier to peel and it also helps strips you remove, those white strips of banana that get stuck to it. You don't need to fill your entire toothbrush with toothpaste. Just covering a third of the toothbrush is plenty. If you want your sticky notes to stick properly, you should peel them from the sides. Finally, the right way to cover an ice cream container after opening it is by placing wax paper or plastic wrap against the surface of the ice cream before closing it, because doing this prevents it from losing its creaminess. While squeezing your pimples is a bad idea, our body always tells us when something's wrong. That's why when the pores of our skin become clogged and infected with bacteria, we get a red, lumpy, pus-filled pimple. Trying to make it go away faster by popping it is a terrible idea. The pressure you apply by squeezing your pimple will force the pus outwards, tearing your skin, creating a new wound that can easily turn into a scar. You're also likely to worsen the wound by adding new bacteria from your hands, because at least 150 types of bacteria are on your hands even when you think they're clean. Another thing that could happen is if you don't remove the entire pimple and accidentally push some dirt inside it, you can get an even bigger pimple and increase the chances of it being infected. If you have lots of acne, it's better to go to a specialist who knows how to treat them, and if you only have a bit, just wait for it to go away on its own. Here's everything that happened at Travis Scott's concert. There's around 50,000 people packed into the sold-out show, when thousands of them started rushing to the stage, crushing people who had nowhere to escape, causing people to pass out because they couldn't breathe. There's footage of people from the crowd climbing the camera towers and asking for help because Travis had no clue what was happening. He did eventually see someone passed out, so he paused the show to ask security to help the person. Then, as you could see from this video, continued performing.
Security, somebody help jump in real quick. Keep going. Just keep it this way.
In this footage, you could see an ambulance in the crowd, and then two men talking to Travis, but then they leave and he continues the show. There is a total of 25 people who were transported to the hospital, and 8 of them passed away. This is a real, scary McDonald's customer service story. A young girl who lived with her 3-year-old sister and her mother experienced a very frightening moment. One of her mother's cousins worked at a McDonald's near where they lived, so she often stays there after school while she waits for her mother to pick her up. One day, while she was studying at McDonald's and taking care of her little sister who was playing in the playground, 2 strange-looking men walked in. One of them suddenly approached the girl and started asking her a bunch of questions. But she was really scared and didn't really answer them. A few minutes later, she looked out to see her sister, but she wasn't there. She quickly got up to look for her and realized that the other man was in the parking lot trying to get her sister into the car while she was kicking and screaming. The girl ran to her mom's cousin and told him to call 911, but the man who was taking her sister gave up when he saw several employees approaching him and left the girl on the ground. If she hadn't acted quickly, she may never have seen her sister again. Things you didn't know about Squid Game. The symbols on the soldiers' masks were inspired by the organization of ant colonies, therefore dividing them into a circle for the workers, a triangle for the soldiers, and a square for the people in charge. The phone number they used on the invitations card to the game belonged to a real business. When the series became popular, thousands of people started phoning that number and asking to join the game. So to solve this, Netflix had to edit the number. The players never realized that the games they would be playing were in front of their eyes the whole time. Each game was painted in order on the wall of the bedroom. The stairs that led the players to the game room and back were inspired by the artwork of a Dutch artist named MC Esther. They actually used 456 people to film the first game, since they didn't want to use a computer-generated image. Finally, the script for Squid Game was created in 2008, but was rejected by several producers before being accepted by Netflix 2 decades later. Secret Places hidden in famous locations part 2. In the Statue of Liberty, there's a small room located inside the torch, but no one can enter it because that part was damaged by the Germans in 1916, and although it was prepared, they don't allow people in it as a safety precaution. Mount Rushmore is famous for the 4 sculpted faces of previous American presidents, but behind them is a secret vault. Inside are different historical documents, like the Declaration of Independence, the biography of the sculptor, and the history of the construction of the place, but no one can access them. Inside Big Ben, there's a hidden room by the bell tower, and although it's no longer in use, it used to be used as a prison for people who breached the code of conduct. The Tower of London is one of the most famous fortresses in the world and home to the yeoman warders, and underneath it there's a pub that you can only enter if you were invited by one of them. Amazing treasures that were found by accident. In 2006, a fisherman got his anchor stuck on a giant clam and soon realized there was a large pearl inside of it. 10 years later, he gave it to his aunt, who gave it to the mayor to show off at a museum. They then realized how valuable the pearl was, because the pearl weighed 34 kilograms and was 30 centimeters wide by 67 centimeters long, with a value estimated to be around $100 million. The Crater of Diamonds is located in Arkansas and is open to the public so they can go and find their own diamonds. In 1924, W.O. Basham was lucky enough to find an 8-gram diamond, which became the largest ever found in the United States, and in 1971 it was sold for $880,000. According to an urban legend, Atari threw out a bunch of its systems into a garbage dump, so Joe Lewandowski, the owner of the garbage company, found records of where the garbage went and invested $50,000 into a search. It turns out that the legend was real and he was able to sell them all over the world for almost $108,000. Disney closed this water park, and the reason why is scary. In 1976, Disney opened its first water park called Country River. It was one of the most popular attractions at Disney World because it had lots of water rides with slides, rivers, and a lake with a sandy bottom. Since it was located in Bay Lake, Florida, it had a unique water filtration system which kept the water clean. But in 2001, the park mysteriously closed, disappointing a lot of people. Disney announced that it was due to remodeling, but years went by and it never reopened. And in 2005, they announced that it would remain closed permanently because they didn't have many visitors. Many people weren't convinced with this explanation because there were still tons of people going there. Instead, they believe the reason is due to several fatal accidents that happened over the years. One of them was an 8-year-old boy who was enjoying a ride. An amoeba from the water got in his body through his nose, and it attacked his nervous system, which ended up killing him. While making fun of this guy can get you life in prison. In Thailand, you can go to jail for 3 to 15 years if you defame, insult, threaten, or criticize the king of Thailand, his wife, and close relatives because it's illegal. The 3 to 15 years will be for each insult the person makes. Here are some examples. In 2007, a Swiss man got drunk in Thailand and spray painted portraits of the king for fun. He was arrested and sentenced to 10 years in prison. In 2008, an Australian wrote a book about the scandalous romances of the Thai royal court and was arrested when they arrived at the Bangkok airport during a trip to the country, sentenced to 3 years in prison. In 2009, a Thai woman was arrested and sentenced to 15 years in prison after giving a speech where she mentioned the royal court and they found it offensive. Finally, in 2017, a 34-year-old man created 10 Facebook posts that were insulting to the royal family, and he was sentenced to 70 years in prison, giving him 7 years for each post. Game endings almost no one has ever seen. Number 1. Flappy Bird. This game was created in just 2 days by a Vietnamese developer, Dong Nguyen. It seemed impossible to reach the end of Flappy Bird, but eventually somebody finally did. When you reach 999 points, the bird meets Mario, and then the game just ends. Number 2. Pac-Man. It was created in 1980 by the Japanese company Namco. After level 21, the game becomes increasingly difficult, making it impossible to win. And according to the developers, the game doesn't have an end because of that reason. However, after many hours of playing the game, the most hardcore fans reached the final level, where they discovered a software bug that not even the developers knew existed. On the screen, the left side of the maze looked normal, but on the right side you could see random letters, numbers, and symbols of various colors. But even with this bug, you could still pass the level, and the only thing that happens is it brings you back to the screen to play again from level 1. The homeless teen who invented Disney. From an early age, Walter Disney showed interest in drawing, and in 1919 he got a job as an apprentice at a commercial art studio. While he was there, he met a friend, and together they opened a drawing business called Disney Eyeworks. But unfortunately, they didn't get any customers, so he decided to start a new business called Laugh-O-Gram Films, but again had no luck. Because of this, he became homeless, and with only $40 in his pocket, he moved to Hollywood. Universal Pictures hired him to create an animated series called Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. The character was a hit, but Universal kept the rights to the rabbit, leaving Walt out of the picture. A little while later, he created a short film with the financial help of Pat Powers. In that film, he included a character that would become one of the most famous cartoons in the world, Mickey Mouse. But eventually, Powers stopped financing it, and Walt went into depression. But soon after, Joseph Schenck encouraged him to animate with color, which resulted in the film Snow White, released in 1937. Today, Walt Disney Studios is one of the most successful companies in the world, with an estimated value of $130 billion. Here's how to become the world's first trillionaire. The competition to be the richest person in the world right now has been in between Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. But this could change in the future because of an industry that hasn't yet been started, which is asteroid mining. Gold, silver, palladium, platinum, and much more can be extracted from asteroids between Mars and Jupiter. For example, the asteroid 16 Psyche has enough supply of ferronickel for the whole world to last for millions of years. The person who starts this industry will make money like never seen before without even traveling that far, because there's valuable asteroids close to Earth, like the 162,173 Ryugu, which is estimated at $83 billion. So far, no one's been able to pull it off, because taking things to space is really expensive. And the most important question is, how are they going to extract the metals from the asteroids? The most uncomfortable products ever designed. Number 1, this child car seat. In order to help parents keep their children quiet in car seats, a designer came up with the idea to paint Disney's Princess Cinderella on it. It looks good when there's a small child sitting in it, but as they get older, you'll have to adjust the headrest, and to do that, you have to stretch Cinderella's neck. Number 2, these Kleenex tissues. We all know the typical Spider-Man pose, and someone decided to put that on a Kleenex box, and whoever designed it didn't think it through, because they put the image in a way where it looks like you're pulling tissues from Spider-Man's bum. Number 3, Wonder Woman scissors. The scissors have a good design when they're closed, but when opened, it looks like you're splitting Wonder Woman in two. And finally, number 4, the red ribbon. In a children's hospital, they painted a pathway that's supposed to look like a red ribbon, but instead it looked like a path left by someone dragging a bloody body. 5 Disney secrets you didn't know. If you look closely, some scenes from different Disney movies are quite similar. This is because the drawings were made by hand, and the animators only make a few changes to create a new scene. Lilo's voice belongs to the actress who played the role of Samara Morgan in the movie The Ring. Since Walt Disney wanted to spend most of his free time at Disneyland, he created a secret apartment on the 2nd floor of the fire station on Main Street, located on the famous avenue that leads to the park's Central Plaza. The name of the wizard in the movie Fantasia is Yensid, which is Disney in reverse. Simba means lion in the Swahili language, and Boo's real name is Mary because the person who plays her is called Mary Gibbs. Finally, Walt ordered to build a bunch of tunnels underneath the park to allow the actors to get from place to place without the public noticing so they wouldn't lose the magic of the place. Here's the only way to survive a zombie apocalypse. The first thing you want to do is get as far away from cities as possible, because even though it'll have lots of food and supplies, soon enough you'd be surrounded by thousands of zombies. From what the movies have showed us, zombies are terrible swimmers, so getting on a boat will probably be the safest way to get away from zombies. But if there's no water nearby, then you'll want to run to the hills, because zombies will have a hard time getting up there, and once you're there, find a building made out of concrete, brick, or metal, because anything weaker like wood can easily be torn down by a horde of zombies. But you won't be able to stay there forever because you'll need food, so make a suit out of anything you could find, like hockey pads, gloves, and a helmet. Now don't drive to the supermarket because they'll hear your vehicle. Once you're there, you'll want to gather enough food and water to last you for a few weeks. But now when you go to leave the supermarket, there's tons of zombies waiting for you outside. And before I tell you what to do next, I found this app that lets you remove anything from the background of your photos. Just press the link in the comments to get it. Finally, in order to leave the supermarket, you either need to hide until they all leave or make a distraction. But if both of those fail, you'll have to camouflage yourself in with them. So you'll have to get some zombie flesh or guts, then rub it all over you to make you smell like them. Then they'll let you walk right past them. Chilling last photos before they went missing. Andrew Macaulay's last photo was a self-portrait taken while he was alone in his kayak in the middle of the ocean. At the age of 39, he set out on a journey to be the first person to kayak from Australia to New Zealand. Unfortunately, even though he prepared for 10 years, he was unable to make it. His kayak and camera were found, but there was no trace of him. He was most likely capsized from a wave separating him from his kayak, and ended up dying from hypothermia in the middle of the ocean. Chris Creamers and Lisanne Froon. In this photo, they're both smiling at the camera, with the mountains of El Pionista Trail in the background. On April 1st, 2014, they were preparing to go on the trail. After the trail, the family that was hosting was concerned because they hadn't returned, so they looked around but they couldn't find them. Days later, on the same trail, they found parts of their decomposed bodies. They think they had a fatal accident, but to this day, their deaths remain a mystery. Things your parents told you that are actually false. Number 1. Carrots help you see in the dark. Carrots are full of vitamin A, which helps maintain eyesight but won't give you night vision. Number 2. Fruit Loops have different flavors based on their color, but in reality, all Fruit Loops taste the same. Number 3. Dropping a penny from the Empire State Building can kill someone that's standing below, but a penny can't get that much speed to do that. Number 4. All chocolate is bad for your health, but dark chocolate in small amounts can be beneficial for your health. Number 5. Oranges are always orange. Some oranges stay green to protect them from the sun. Number 6. The humps on camels store water. What they actually do is store fat. The most dangerous prisoner. In 2007, a lady living near a Californian state prison got home late and went straight to bed. She woke up at midnight to the sound of footsteps. She thought it was her roommate, so she went downstairs to greet him. Suddenly, she realizes it isn't him and is shocked to see the stranger, who is about 6'1", walking towards her, so she ran to hide. While she was hiding and trying not to make any noise, she could hear the man running around, moving her furniture and screaming in frustration because he couldn't find her. After a few hours, she slowly came out to grab her phone and called 911. She quietly told them what had happened and described the man who was in her house. The police told her to remain calm and return to the place where she was hiding, and they would send someone to her house as soon as possible. It turned out that the man was a convicted murderer who had escaped prison. Sneaky ways airports get you to spend more money. The first thing they do is put the parking ticket at a high price. It's cheaper if you park at a nearby hotel or get a ride by a bus or cab. They also ask you to arrive early to avoid missing your flight. So after checking in and going through security, you'll feel relieved and ready to wait for boarding. And you'll also have plenty of free time to shop. Airports take advantage of this by placing lots of stores in your way, like coffee shops, convenience stores, and restaurants. Most commonly, more stores will be on your right, because most people are right-handed and they tend to look that way more often. Finally, you'll find eye-catching and spacious stores to attract your attention, so you can walk right through with your luggage, while restaurants and cafes will have a quiet atmosphere to make you feel more comfortable and spend more money. Here's what would happen if you fell off a cruise ship. In 2018, a British lady was on the Norwegian Star cruise ship when she suddenly fell off the back. As soon as the crew found out about this, they started a search and rescue for her. They also called the authorities, who sent water patrol, an aircraft, and 2 rescue boats to find her. After 10 hours, they managed to find her and quickly took her to the hospital. The chances of survival are slim, but she has several things in her favor. Because she worked as a flight attendant, so she probably knew what to do in this situation. Even though these accidents aren't very common, they have emergency protocols in place. If there's an eyewitness who can report what happened, the crew notifies the captain, who usually stops the ship and backs it up. The authorities and the Coast Guard are then notified, while the crew searches for the spot where the person fell off. If you ever fall overboard, it's important to stay calm, try to stay where you fell, don't drink seawater, and keep your clothes on. This man has the longest nails in the world. Sridhar Shalal stopped cutting the nails on his left hand in 1952 when he was just 14 years old. His longest nail was on his thumb, measuring 197.8 centimeters long. In 2014, he got a Guinness World Record for having the longest nails in history on a single hand, with a total length of 909.6 centimeters. Having such long nails has been rewarding for him because of all the recognition he gets, but it's also brought him a lot of negative consequences because of the weight and length of the nails. For example, he has a permanent disability of his left hand, and a lot of pain in his fingers, wrist, elbow, and shoulder. But in July 2018, after 66 years without cutting his nails, he decided it was time to do it. They couldn't cut them with traditional nail clippers, so they had to use power tools. Now his nails are displayed in 2 different locations. 3 of them are at Ripley's Believe It or Not in New York, and the other 2 are at Ripley's Believe It or Not in Amsterdam. The Power of Time Part 2. This guy's mom gave him and his brother the exact same teddy bear when they were born. but you could tell which one had more love. These indents in the carpet are from this person's cat walking the exact same path every single day. These 3 knives have been used so much at this person's work that they're almost gone. This is someone's carpet after moving their bed for the first time in 60 years. Here's this person's sun damage after being a delivery truck driver for 28 years. Here's what the floor of a bank looks like after years of people standing in the same spot. Now before I show you the craziest one, I found this app that lets you create your own fonts to use as your keyboard. Just press the link in the comments to get it. Here's the difference in stairs built in 1829 versus 2005. You won't believe what this man actually did. Nico Jenkins is an American born on September 16th, 1986. At the age of 15, he stole a car and the cops caught him, and he was then sentenced to 7 years in prison. But because of his bad behavior, it ended up being 10.5 years. After being released in 2013, not even a month had gone by before he turned from a thief to a murderer, committing 4 murders with a shotgun. He confessed to the murders during an interview with the police. He said the reason he executed them was done as a sacrifice to the ancient Egyptian god Apopis. In April 2014, he was found guilty of the 4 murders by a judge. He was also ordered to be put in a psychiatric hospital, but it didn't go through, so he was treated by doctors in prison. In May 2017, he was sentenced to death and 450 years in prison by 3 judges. In 2020, his appeal was denied, and to this day, his death sentence hasn't been carried out. This 6-year-old boy became the youngest soldier in World War II. Sergei Aleshkov, a 6-year-old boy, was orphaned during World War II after German troops arrived and killed everyone in his village, including his mother and brother. Sergei managed to escape with the help of a neighbor and quickly ran into the forest. After a few days, he was found by Soviet scouts who took him to a shelter led by Major Kozelski. Kozelski decided to leave him with the battle troops, and he was soon adopted by Mikhail Vorobyov, who didn't want to send him to an orphanage. Sergei didn't take part in combat operations. Instead, he had tasks like delivering letters and newspapers. He also brought the soldiers whatever they needed, including water, ammo, and grenades. But one of the times he went to deliver the newspaper, he saw suspicious people in a haystack and informed the artillery commander. The people turned out to be German spies who were then neutralized. After the war, Vorobyov raised Sergei, who later got married, had 2 children, and passed away in 1990. The happiest prisoner on death row. Joe Arity was born in 1915 in Colorado. He eventually entered the state training and home school for the mentally handicapped at the age of 10. At the age of 21, he left school and boarded a freight car, and ended up in Wyoming. At the same time, the police were on the lookout for a person guilty of murder and attempted murder on the 2 sisters, Dorothy and Barbara Drain. While Joe was wandering around, he was stopped by the sheriff George Carroll, who thought he was a suspect in the crime. After questioning him, the sheriff said he confessed to the crimes and was arrested. Then Frank Aguilar, who worked for the Drain family, confessed to the crime. Barbara, who was the survivor of the attack, confirmed that it was Frank and said that she had never seen Joe. Joe's lawyer tried to obtain a plea of insanity because 3 psychiatrists said that he had an IQ of 46 and the mind of a 6-year-old. Despite this, Joe was wrongfully sentenced to death, and everyone who saw him in jail said that he kept smiling. On the day of his execution, he still couldn't understand what was going on and still had a smile on his face as he entered the gas chamber. This 5-year-old girl disappeared every night until her father followed her to this house. It took 4 days for Tom, who's Annie's father, to realize that she wasn't in her room or in the backyard where she always played. When the girl finally showed up, he asked where she was, but she didn't say a word. On the 5th day, Tom decides to follow her without her noticing, but he loses sight of her. On the 6th day, he tries again and this time manages to follow her to her grandparents' abandoned house. He stayed hidden while he watched his daughter greet a female stranger. He then waits for his daughter to leave, then walks up to the stranger and questions her. She was an 80-year-old lady named Linda who ran away from her nursing home because she didn't want to live there. So she wandered the streets with dogs that she adopted until she met the girl who provided her with shelter and met her every day at the same time to give her food. Eventually, Annie's parents gave the house to Linda, and later with the help of donations turned it into an animal shelter. The biggest thing you missed in Squid Game, just to warn you, there are spoilers. One of the biggest twists in the show is that the old man was in charge of the games, and there was lots of clues to show this that most people missed. For starters, that's the reason why he was player number 1. That's why he was the only old person in the game. That's why he wasn't surprised when people started getting shot in the first game. That's why he knew how to win tug-of-war, and that's why the neighborhood in the marble game looked like the neighborhood he grew up in. But that's not all. When the robot was scanning people in red light, green light, it didn't pick up the old man as a player. His name translated into English is number 1 man. This is why he basically convinced player 456 to re-enter the game, and this is why he was the only player to not get gassed when he entered the van to go back to the game. Secrets hidden in national monuments. The Lincoln Memorial was unveiled on May 30th, 1922. It was created to honor the memory of the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln. This lady gets caught shoplifting, then what the officer does will shock you. On a cold winter day, an officer was called to a Walgreens for a report of a shoplifting. The worker said she seen her take her things from her basket, then stuff them into her jacket. But when the officer questioned her, she said she had nothing in her jacket. She said she put everything back because she was supposed to be meeting her boyfriend there, but he never showed up. The officer asked her if he were to search her jacket if he would find anything, and she still said no. He gave her one more chance to come clean and take anything out. The worker even said that if she came clean, they wouldn't press charges and only give her a no trespass. She thought about it for a few seconds and finally pulled out a hat and gloves. When the officer was taking her information and asked for her address, she said she was homeless, and that since it was cold, she just wanted a hat and gloves. The officer told her to never do it again and that there were other ways than stealing, but decided to buy her the hat and gloves in the end so she wouldn't be cold. This is why you should always have a dash cam in your vehicle. This lady was test driving a vehicle from her husband's dealership when a cop passed her, then suddenly turned around and turned on his lights. She was stopped at a red light, then when it turned green, she turned. She didn't know if the officer was pulling her over because she didn't think she did anything wrong, but she pulled over anyway. When she put the vehicle into park, she took off her seatbelt. When the officer walked up to her window, she said that she took off her seatbelt because it was a habit. Then he said the reason he was pulling her over is because she wasn't wearing a seatbelt. She was being honest when she said it was a habit, but the officer was using it to his advantage. She remembered she had a dash cam and told him that. Then he walked away without giving her a ticket. If she never had a dash cam, it would have been her word versus the officer's. This 11-year-old boy found a buried girl, and here's what happened. Connor Fitzgerald was playing in the sand with his friends. They decided to have a contest to see who could dig the biggest hole. As Connor dug deeper and deeper, he suddenly hit something. He dug around it and it turned out to be a backpack. He tried to pull it out but realized it was still attached to a body. He immediately got up to get some help, but no grown-ups were nearby. So he dug the girl up himself. He remembered a TV show where a character performed CPR, and since the girl was unconscious, he began doing it. As he continued doing it, a couple began running towards him. It was the girl's parents who had been looking for her. They called 911 and were told that paramedics were on the way. Apparently the girl was standing on a sand cave when it collapsed, but the paramedics wouldn't be there in time to save her. So he continued doing CPR until she began to cough. Then shortly after, the ambulance arrived and took her to the hospital. She made a full recovery with no long-term damage. The luckiest people caught on camera. One night, these two guys were imitating the UFC fighter Conor McGregor. Then a vehicle stopped and rolled down the window to talk to them, and it coincidentally turned out to be Conor McGregor. During a biking race, one of the riders fell off of his bike, which made him lose the lead by quite a bit. Then he got up and quickly started going again, and managed to pass the riders to take the lead again and win the race. During a basketball game, Russell Westbrook missed a dunk but managed to get an extremely lucky bounce. This guy decided to sled down a hill, but he didn't know that it led to a road where two vehicles were passing by. Luckily, he managed to miss them both. The most respectful moments in sports. At the finals in an archery competition, one of the archer's bows malfunctioned, making it impossible for the arrow to shoot normally, resulting in an automatic miss for him. When his opponent realized what had happened, he walked off the line, so he got a miss as well to level the playing field. During a soccer or football match, the ref gave a player a penalty shot, but he missed it on purpose because he didn't think it was a fair call. When LeBron James noticed a fan wearing the team's shirt and a number 23 necklace, which is his number, he decided to make her day by inviting her to sit on the bench with him. And here was her reaction. This plane disappeared and landed 37 years later, but here's what actually happened. In 1955, a plane took off from New York with 57 passengers and 4 crew members headed to Florida. Then shortly after, the plane disappeared from radar screens, and no one in the control tower could get a hold of them. The authorities assumed the worst and figured that it had malfunctioned and crashed. They searched for where the plane crashed, but they never found it, so they figured it landed in the ocean. The airline gave money to the families who had lost loved ones, and the case was closed. Then on May 21st, 1992, which was 37 years later, the air control workers in Venezuela seen a plane in the sky, but it wouldn't pick up on their radar. Then a worker received a signal from the plane, and it was the pilot asking where they were. Then he explained what flight they were and where they were going. The workers were in shock, then told them the date, and the pilot started freaking out. And when they landed, the workers were speechless because of how outdated the plane was. They were about to help the passengers get off when the pilot suddenly took off back into the air. A few hours later, it landed in Miami, where it was supposed to land 37 years ago. When they got off the plane, they were all interrogated, but the weirdest part is they never aged a day. This story went viral in the newspaper and then on YouTube, but it turned out to be fake. This man is a hero, and you won't believe what Elon Musk did for him. Manfred Kick was driving his Tesla when he noticed a vehicle in front of him kept hitting the rail on the side of the road. He decided to pass them because he figured it was dangerous being behind them. But when he was passing, he noticed the driver was unconscious. He decided to pull in front of the vehicle and slow down so the vehicle would hit the back of his car, then kept slowing down until both vehicles came to a stop. Because he decided to do this, the back of his Tesla got damaged. Now before I tell you what Elon Musk did, if you've ever wondered how to get these secret emojis and some cool fonts to impress your friends, then press the link in the comments to get the app. In appreciation to the man saving the person's life, Elon Musk repaired his vehicle for free. This baboon worked for a railway and never made a mistake. James Wilde went by the nickname Jumper because he had the habit of jumping in between the moving carts on the track. But unfortunately, in the 1800s, one of those times, he fell off onto the railway tracks, losing both of his legs. He continued to work using pegs to walk around, but he noticed he couldn't signal as efficient as before. One day when he was at the market, he seen a baboon that was trained to push a wagon. Jumper begged the owner to let him take take the baboon and he finally agreed. But he warned him that the baboon wouldn't do anything unless he was given lots of alcohol. At work, when Jumper held up a certain amount of fingers, the baboon would pull down the corresponding lever. And after a while, the baboon learned to do everything himself. Jumper's boss knew he had someone helping him, but didn't know it was a baboon, so tried firing them both. Jumper begged his boss to see how smart the baboon was, so he agreed to let him take a test. He performed the job perfectly, so the boss let them stay. And he even started paying the baboon 20 cents a day and half a bottle of alcohol a week. In the 9 years that he worked, he never made a mistake. 3 times, actors weren't acting. In the movie It, all the actors who played the kids decided they didn't want to see what Pennywise the Clown looked like until they started filming. So in this scene, the reactions were actually real because it was the first time they were seeing him. In the movie Jaws, they didn't tell the actor who was getting attacked first that there would be a machine pulling them underwater. So all of her screams and panicking were real. In the movie Now You See Me, the actor Isla Fisher performed all her stunts herself. There was one trick where she had to be chained underwater in a tank and try to escape. In the scene, she struggled trying to get out of the chains and it looked like she was drowning, which is what was actually happening in real life and not just in the movie. A stuntman thought it was going on for too long, so got her out, which saved her life. A cop buys lemonade from this girl's stand, then returns the next day to surprise her. Gabrielle asked her parents if they could buy her a tablet, but unfortunately they couldn't afford it. So she thought of the perfect way to make some money with a lemonade stand. Her mom took her to a place downtown which had lots of traffic. Then all of a sudden, an officer walked up to them. He said, "How much are you charging today, miss?" And she replied with 50 cents. The cop gave her $3 and said he would tell other people about her lemonade stand. She had tons of people buy lemonade, then eventually another cop pulled up. He asked her what she wanted to do with the money, and she said she wanted to buy a tablet for school and to play games on. The officer told her mom that since she probably wouldn't make enough money to buy a tablet, he wanted to help them out. So he went back home to get his old iPad, but it wouldn't turn on. When he went back to the lemonade stand to tell them the bad news, he asked the girl how her lemonade sale went. She said she made a few dollars, but she gave it to her mom because her gas tank was empty. He decided he couldn't just leave without giving her what she wanted. So the next day, when her family was watching her brother's football game, the girl seen the officer in the parking lot, so she ran over to him, and he surprised her with a brand new tablet that he just bought for her. This sad story will make you cry. A girlfriend gave a challenge to her boyfriend to live a whole day without her. That meant a whole day without phoning or texting her. And she promised him that if he passed, she would love him forever. The boyfriend agreed, and he never called her or texted her for the whole day. But he never knew that his girlfriend only had 24 hours left to live, because she was dying from cancer. The next day, he excitedly went to his girlfriend's house. When the door opened, he said, "I did it, baby," but her parents were there instead. And they handed him a note that said, "You did it, baby. Now please do it every day. I love you," which made him burst out in tears. This guy never has to pay at restaurants, and here's why. His name is Salvador Dali, and he has the best trick to get out of paying for expensive meals. He always brings his friends and families to the most expensive restaurants in the city. And he also always tells them to get whatever they want and he would take care of it. When the bill comes, he never pays with cash or a card. He always writes the restaurant a check. But since he's a famous artist, he always draws a quick sketch on the back and signs it, because his drawing and signature is worth way more than the meal. So far, he's never gotten money taken out of his bank account from doing this. She had an itch in her nose, so she went to the hospital, then discovered something horrifying. Daniela Lavarni is a 24-year-old from Scotland, and she loves traveling to foreign countries. She decided her next trip would be to Asia. Her first stop was in Vietnam, but when she was there, she got into a motorcycle accident. Luckily, she wasn't badly hurt, but shortly after, she noticed an itch in her nose. Then a few hours later, her nose started to bleed. A few days later, she flew back to Scotland, but the itches and nosebleeds didn't stop. One day, when she got out of the shower, she looked in the mirror and there's a big blob coming out of her nose that went all the way down to her lip. So she immediately went to the hospital. After half an hour and a lot of pain, the doctors managed to pull out a leech from her nose. The doctor said it most likely got into her body from contaminated drinking water during her trip, then grew by feeding off of her blood. This hole appeared out of nowhere, but we finally know why. In 2018, this random hole appeared in Lake Berryessa. Evan Kilkus, who worked at the boat and jet ski rental place at the lake, loves drones and decided to explore the lake with one. But then he found something weird. It appeared to be a massive hole, so he decided to fly his drone a bit closer. He didn't see anything unusual at first until he flew a bit farther over the dam. There was a large hole at the bottom of the dam with water gushing out of it. Apparently the hole was made when the lake was made, and it's there to make sure the lake doesn't overflow. The reason no one noticed it before is because it was so dry, and there wasn't enough water to cover the hole until there was a massive rainfall. This man donated half his liver to a stranger who only had 2 months to live, and you won't believe what happened next. One day when he was at work, he overheard a coworker that he barely knew talking about his cousin who only had 2 months to live. She had a liver disease and needed a transplant, but there's 119,000 people in line ahead of her. Christopher. So unless she got a donor, she only had a few months to live. Christopher decided to go in and see if he was a match, and it turns out he was, so he donated half of his liver. The girl's name is Heather Kruger, and they didn't get to meet until after the surgery. But as soon as they did meet, they instantly fell in love and started dating, and then 2 years later, they got married. A mom brought her little girl to the skate park, but it was full of teenage boys, and what happens next will shock you. This little girl wanted to go skateboarding for months. Her mom had to convince her that it wasn't just for boys. When they drove to the skate park and it was full of teenage boys smoking and swearing, she wanted to go home. The mom secretly wanted to go home too, because she didn't want to have to yell at the boys. When the girl said, "Mom, it's full of older boys," she replied with, "So what? They don't own the skate park." The girl decided to go down a ramp, even though the boys were grinding rails and flying by her. She was only there for a couple minutes when a boy came up to her and said, "Hey, excuse me." Her mom got ready to use her mom voice on him, but then she heard him say, "Your feet are wrong, can I help you?" He then spent an hour teaching the little girl how to ride, even though his friends were making fun of him. This boy got in trouble because the teacher thought he was lying when he said his uncle was Superman, but he was actually telling the truth. Thomas is a 7-year-old boy who loves dressing up as Superman. One day, a teacher asked him why he always dressed like that. He said it's because his uncle is Superman. The teacher tried explaining to him that Superman isn't real, but he kept saying that he's real and he's his uncle. So the teacher sent him to the principal's office. The principal and the teacher called his mom to come and told the boy that it's bad to lie. When his mom found out why he was in trouble, you won't believe what happened next. But before I tell you, I found this app that lets you erase anything from your photos. Just press a link in the comments to get it. His mom called her brother-in-law and asked if he could take Thomas to school to prove that he wasn't lying. His name is Henry Cavill, and he's the actor who played Superman in the movies. When they got to the school, all the teachers and kids were in shock. The ending of this sad story will shock you. A man married a beautiful girl that he loved very much. One day she developed a skin disease, which made her slowly lose her beauty. The next day, her husband left for a tour. When he was returning, he got into an accident and lost his eyesight. But their married life continued like usual. As the days passed, she lost her beauty even more. But since the man was blind, he didn't know this, and continued to love her. But one day, she suddenly passed away. The man was very sad and wanted to leave the town. But someone asked him, "How will you be able to walk alone since your wife always helped you?" He then said, "I'm not blind. I was acting because if she knew I could see her skin condition, it would have pained her even more than the disease. So I pretended to be blind to keep her happy." This is why you should always wear a helmet on a motorcycle. A boy and a girl were going over 100 miles per hour on a motorcycle. The girl told him to slow down because she was scared. But the boy said, "No, this is fun." The girl said, "No, it's not. It's scary." The boy then said, "Tell me you love me." So she said, "Fine, I love you. Now slow down." But the boy said, "Now give me a big hug." So she did. He then told her to take off his helmet and put it on. The next day in the paper, it said that a motorcycle had crashed into a building due to a brake failure. 2 people were on the motorcycle, but only 1 survived. The truth is that halfway down the road, the boy realized that his brakes had broke, but he didn't want to let his girlfriend know. Instead, he got her to say she loved him, then gave him a hug for the last time, then had her put on his helmet so she would live even though it meant he would die. This true story will make you cry. When a boy was 15, he asked his dad what he was going to get him for his 18th birthday. His dad said, "Son, that's still a long ways away." When the boy was 17, he fainted and his dad brought him to the hospital. The doctor told his dad that his son had a bad heart. When the boy was on the stretcher, he said to his dad, "Did he tell you I'm going to die?" And his dad burst out crying. The boy finally recovered, and on his 18th birthday he was sent home. And on his bed there was a letter from his dad. The letter said, "Son, if you're reading this, it's because everything went well. Remember when you asked me what I was going to get you for your 18th birthday and I didn't know the answer? Well, I gave you my heart. Happy birthday, son." This is the smartest scam in history, and you won't believe how he did it. A con artist decided he wanted to build a skyscraper in Texas. On the blueprint, he put it was going to be 480 tall. He didn't specify whether it was 480 centimeters, inches, or feet. So the investors just assumed that he meant 480 feet tall and invested $200,000, which is around $3 million today. He did make the skyscraper, but it was only 4 stories high and 480 inches tall. Then he kept the rest of the money for himself. The investors decided to bring him to court, but the judge decided that the investors got exactly what they signed for and the man got to keep the money. This McDonald's worker paid for her family's meal after the mom forgot her wallet, and the way she repays him will shock you. When Brittany was driving her 3 kids home from football, her youngest kid started crying because he was hungry. So she decided to go to McDonald's and get everyone food. When she got to the drive-thru, she ordered, then pulled up to the first window to pay. But then she noticed she forgot her wallet. She then looked up to the McDonald's worker with tears in her eyes because she was so stressed, and told him to cancel her order. The worker was a 16-year-old kid named Wyatt. Without even thinking, he pulled out his wallet and paid for the family's food. The family later found out that he was saving up money to buy a car, and the way they repay him will shock you, but before I tell you how, my merch just released today. If you want to support me and get some sick-looking clothes while you're at it, just press a link in the comments to check it out. The family set up a GoFundMe page, and it raised over $50,000. This man faked a 2-year coma to avoid going to court, and you won't believe how he got caught. His name is Alan, and he stole $60,000 from his 86-year-old neighbor. As soon as the cops started to investigate, that's when he decided to fake an injury. He said a garage door fell on his back, which paralyzed him from his neck down. He went to the doctors, and even though they said there was nothing wrong with him and they couldn't see anything, he kept going back. He kept doing this for 2 years, and whenever the police came to talk to him, he hopped in a medical bed and would pretend he's in a coma at his house. But 2 years later, he got caught shopping on a security camera when he was supposed to be in a coma. He was then sentenced to 14 months in prison. This guy came out of a 12-year coma, and what he told them shocked everyone. When Martin was 12 years old, he came home from school with a sore throat. A few days later, he was so exhausted that he almost lost control of his body and slept all the time. He eventually started to lose memory, then a few days later fell into a coma. After a while, the doctor said that Martin had completely lost touch with the outside world and there was nothing they could do to help him. Martin was sent home and his parents were told that all they could do was look after him and hope he woke up. When he was 17, he regained his consciousness and memory, but he still couldn't talk. But he couldn't let his parents know that because no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't speak. He even heard his mom say that it would be better if everything just ended right now. Martin was sad because he could hear her say that, but he knew she just wanted what was best for him. When he was 25, a paramedic that was working with him noticed he was trying to smile and nod at her. As soon as she noticed this, he was sent to a center for alternative communication, where he passed multiple tests to prove he was conscious. When his mom found this out, she quit her job and developed a computer program so that Martin could communicate. He even met his sister's friend and a year later got married to her. And finally, in 2011, he released a book called Ghost Boy where he shared his story. This girl called 911 to order pizza. A dispatcher from Ohio named Tim Tenick was on duty answering 911 calls when he got someone who asked to order a pizza. At first, Tim thought it was a joke, so he confirmed that she wanted to order a pizza and didn't need any help. When he told her it wasn't the right number to order pizza, she said, no, you're not understanding. And that's all Tim needed to figure out what was actually going on. He got all the information he needed from her by her pretending like she was ordering pizza. For example, when he asked if the guy was still there, she replied with, yes, I need a large pizza. He then sent some officers to the house and told them to turn off the siren so the man wouldn't know they were coming. It turns out her boyfriend was physically assaulting her mom and he was arrested. He was bullied and called Rabbit Boy, but a few years later he shocked everyone. When Evan Hill was growing up, he was bullied and teased for his large teeth and an overbite so big that he couldn't close his mouth all the way or speak properly. Orthodontist Rob Sloiter described his teeth as the worst case he's seen in 25 years. The teeth were so massive that it would cost around $12,000 to fix. But Evan's family was in a financial rut because an earthquake had recently damaged their house and they even lost their car, which they used to take him to dentist appointments. But the way they ended up earning the money to pay for it will shock you. Before I tell you, I've been playing this super fun game where you cut down wood to build your town then defend it from enemies. Just press the link in the comments to get it. Evan was invited on a news show in New Zealand, and after sharing his story with thousands of people watching from home, people from all across the country started fundraising campaigns and donated to him. Part of the money was even used to buy the family a new car, and the leftover money went towards other kids who needed dental work. Here's what Evan looks like now. This guy didn't do any work in a group project, so his partner got the ultimate revenge. The girl in the group needed 50% or better to pass the class and graduate, so she calculated that if she got 0% on the project, she would still pass. Since her partner didn't want to fail the class, he would call her every once in a while to see how she was doing. The girl kept saying she was almost done it when in reality she hadn't even started it. The day before it was due, he called her to ask her if she could send him the presentation. She sent him an empty PowerPoint, then shut off her phone so he couldn't call her. The day of the presentation, he was nervous, but the girl reassured him by saying she would do everything. When they got up to present to the class, she said, I already had a good enough grade to pass the class, and since my partner decided not to do any work, I decided to take the day off. He ended up having to go to summer school, but he didn't pass, so he has to take his senior year all over again. She didn't know she had cancer until she was on live television. Nicole McGinnis wanted a house near the beach. She even went on the TV show called Beach House Bargain Hunt. On the show, she looked happy about the house hunt with her dad, but if you look at her closely, you could see a small bump on her throat. Dr. Eric Voigt was watching the show at home. He's an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. He said that he felt obligated to let her know that she had something in case she didn't already know, because as an expert in the field, he felt concerned for her. He used social media to try and reach out to her, and it ended up getting back to her family. She immediately went to the doctor and was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. She got to meet the doctor who reached out to her, and as of December 24th, 2020, she reached the 5-year mark since her cancer was removed. 3 tricks Walmart doesn't want you to know. Have you ever been at the store and someone asks you if you want to try a free sample or a new product? Well, a scientist said when you take the free sample, it makes your brain think it's dinner time, making you want to buy it. They sometimes put items on sale to make you think like you're getting a better deal, when in reality they put the sale price as what they would normally sell it for as retail. You may think they just throw products on the shelves randomly, but they actually do it strategically. The top shelf has smaller brands, regional brands, and gourmet brands. They put them there to give tone and texture to the shelf, to help the store stand out from its competitors. The 2 shelves below are where they put the top selling brand, because it's at the customer's eye level, giving them a higher chance of buying it. Below that are the kids shelves, where they usually place child appealing items, making the kids want to ask their parents if they could buy it. And finally, on the very bottom, they have the local brands and bulk items. You won't believe what this family found underneath their house's floorboards. In May 2020, the Christiansens from Norway decided they wanted to install some insulation under their floor. When they started tearing up their old floorboards, they found what looked like a wheel from an old toy car. They knew it was old because the floorboards hadn't been replaced since the house was built in 1914. A little while later, they also found an iron axe head, so they decided to call the police about it. Experts from a museum in Norway were sent to their house to examine what they found, but when they started digging, they found even more strange looking artifacts. There were ancient remains and iron arrowheads, which which they discovered were from the Viking Age, and the toy car tire was actually a glass bead from the same time. According to archaeologists, their house was on top of a Viking burial site. They're commonly identified by a pile of stones like these ones that were found under their house. Those stones were used as what we call a headstone today. This man swam in a cave but never returned, and a few years later the police found out the shocking truth. After going through financial difficulty and being $50,000 in debt, Ben McDonald needed an escape from reality. He decided to go explore the caves at a nearby park called Vortex Spring. Even though a certificate was required to go cave diving, he jumped in the water in the restricted zone anyway, and 2 of the park employees seen him go into it, but he wasn't spotted at his house for the next 2 days. His truck was still parked outside of the park with his wallet in it, and none of his neighbors had seen him. The local authorities began a search and rescue in the entire park, but after weeks of searching they still hadn't found anything, so they called an expert cave diver named Ed Sorensen. The police were sure he would find his body because he was diving deeper than they had gone before, but he couldn't find anything and the case was classed as an unsolved mystery, until a few years later when a park employee was mysteriously murdered. Apparently he had heard information about Ben's disappearance, which was actually a murder. The reason why none of Ben's remains were found is because they were removed from the crime scene, and the 2 park employees were paid by someone to leave before Ben returned to the surface. Many people believe he was killed because he got into illegal activity trying to pay off his debt. This guy found 45 rattlesnakes under his house and you won't believe what he did with them. In 2019, a man started having problems with his cable service. He wanted to see if he could fix the problem himself, so he crawled into his crawl space to see if he could find a loose wire. But then he noticed a couple rattlesnakes, which are fairly common in Texas, but their venom can cause nausea, sweating, blurred vision, and even death. So being in an enclosed area with them isn't the best idea. But it got a lot worse when he noticed there wasn't just 2 snakes, but 45 of them. He immediately got out of there and called Big Country Snake Removal. They then came to his house and took them all out into buckets. The man lived around 40 minutes away from Sweetwater, which is famous for a rattlesnake roundup. They round up over 250,000 rattlesnakes in plastic bins before butchering them. Some people say it helps with rattlesnake awareness, where other people say it should be banned. The festival organizers paid $10 per pound of snakes, so he could have made around $2,700. But instead, he chose to have them delivered to a quiet place and released back into the wilderness. This dog was acting strange, so the family looked outside, then called 911. The 4-year-old Labrador Retriever mix named Midnight followed her owner Tim Kerfman outside one night as he brought out the trash. When they got back inside, she then began acting oddly, trying to alert him that something was wrong. She was perked up on high alert, and it was clear to Tim that she had seen something unusual. When she started going crazy at the door, Tim decided to open it and followed her outside into the freezing weather. The entire state of Minnesota was in the middle